Okay, some of you submitted review questions for exam number 2, so I thought I'd take an opportunity to answer a few of them for you, and then this video I'll link to this video via Blackboard so you can look at it before taking the exam. So one of the questions was why was the length of terms for governors and lieutenant governors changed in 1972 that took effect in 1974? One was to provide greater stability in the lawmaking process. So by having 4-year terms, giving governors a great opportunity to get things done, as well as reducing the cost of conducting elections by having elections every 2 years for statewide positions. It increases the cost for voters. So by going to the 4-year term, it brings it more consistently in line with other offices, as well as taking some of the gubernatorial elections out of presidential election years. So Texas holds its gubernatorial elections opposite presidential elections. So the next gubernatorial election in Texas is 2018. So that means it is completely separate from the U.S. presidential election. Another question was, how do bureaucracies work with boards and commissions, etc.? It's kind of a combination of things where the boards and commissions have a lot of responsibility for shaping public policies that the legislature and or the Constitution delegates responsibility and authority to actually implementing the policies. So in a lot of cases, the legislature writes a law, or the Constitution simply says that a particular agency has responsibility for something, and then instead of the legislature going through the lawmaking process, various bureaucratic agencies go through the lawmaking process. So, for example, it's up to the State Board of Education to make the rules regarding textbooks. So, for example, companies that want to produce textbooks for the Texas market have to meet certain requirements that are specified by the State Board of Education, as opposed to dealing with the state legislature. Similarly, there are other boards and commissions that have responsibility for, let's say, environmental regulations. So again, the Texas Council on Environmental Quality is responsible for monitoring and enforcing policies with regard to air pollution. So again, it's not something that the legislature handles directly. And this is pretty common in the sense that it allows the boards and commissions that have more information and expertise to take the lead on rulemaking, as opposed to the legislature, which may not have all of the information. Another question was, do the informal powers give the governor a better chance of success than the formal powers? That's kind of a double-edged sword, I think. The formal powers that the governor has are largely related to blocking legislation and, kind of requiring the governor to work with the legislature. So I would probably say that the informal powers give the governor a better chance of success by building relationships, by trying to leverage popularity. The governor is the most high-profile figure in the state, so that gives him an opportunity, or gives her an opportunity, to take a more prominent role. So I think the informal powers are probably a little bit more valuable to governors in terms of getting things done. Another kind of bureaucracy-related question, does the EPA work for or closely with the Agriculture Commissioner? The Environmental Protection Agency is a federal agency, and they work with the Agriculture Commissioner. So the Agriculture Commissioner is responsible for Texas agriculture and things along those lines, dealing with diseases and inspections. So the Commissioner of Agriculture in Texas is going to work with the EPA and with the United States Department of Agriculture to ensure that the policies and the regulations and the rules for Texas farmers are consistent across both the state and the federal levels. Another question was about what role does the lieutenant governor play on different boards and commissions, such as the Legislative Audit Committee or the Legislative Budget Board. These are all positions where the lieutenant governor is effectively acting as a policymaker on these different committees. So he's one of several different voices. So he's just one of a couple of different people. It just depends on what's going on. But on the Legislative Budget Board in particular, this gives the lieutenant governor a substantial amount of power in shaping what the budgetary request is going to look like for the biennium. So it could be a very powerful position in that regard, because the chambers also alternate in terms of which chamber introduces the budget every 2 years. So the Legislative Budget Board is a professional agency, and it gives the Lieutenant Governor a substantial amount of power in between sessions to help shape what's going on. Other ones, the Legislative Audit Committee, not nearly as powerful. So it just kind of depends on the different boards and commissions that the Lieutenant Governor is serving on. Someone else asked about the informal requirements for running for office. Are those associated with the other offices in the plural executive? And yes, the answer is yes. In most cases, you're looking at the same set of characteristics that largely shape who is running for those other offices. People generally seek to move up. There's kind of a theory of ambition in that regard. So certainly it's true, probably more so for, let's say, the Attorney General and the Comptroller of Public Accounts, and perhaps a little bit less so for the Land Commissioner and the Commissioner of Agriculture. And then one other question was, what decisions can the governor truly decide on his own? Vetoes. That's strictly at the discretion of the governor. The legislature passes bills. Those go to the governor. He makes a decision whether he or she wants to sign a particular bill or veto a particular bill, and that's the end of the story. Virtually everything else that the governor does is done in consultation with others, whether it's advice and consent for appointments. Yes, the governor has the ability to call special sessions, but having special sessions is meaningless if the legislature is not actually willing to do the work. So again, you would expect that a governor thinking about a special session might want to reach out to the speaker and the lieutenant governor before calling the legislature into special session. So outside of that, the governor doesn't have quite the same set of powers that the President of the United States has in terms of unilateral action. So for those of you who have taken U.S. government, whether with me or with somebody else, if you go back and look at your notes, modern U.S. presidents have a lot greater ability to act unilaterally, and that is certainly not fair to say that the Texas governor has the ability to do. So keep the questions coming, and I'll do my best to answer them as they show up. Other than that, just a quick reminder that make sure that you submit exam number 2 by tomorrow, so that's October 12th at 11:59 p.m. And we do not have class tomorrow, so that everyone has an opportunity to complete exam number 2. Good luck.